So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we will be discussing leading in a growth mindset. My name is Sarah Keene, and I am the Member Programs Director for the National Apartment Association. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping points. This presentation will be recorded, and we will post this on NAA's webinar page early next week. So if anyone wants to circle back and review this presentation, you are more than welcome to. And during this discussion, we will have, you will have the option to type in questions for our speakers. And so you will notice you can type in questions through our Q&A feature or the chat box on your screen. And today's moderator will share those questions with our speakers when we have time left at the end of this presentation. And so now I will turn over this presentation to Cristina Istrate, who is a member of NAA's Next Gen Committee, to introduce our outstanding speakers today. Cristina.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to have you with us this afternoon as we discuss the topic of leadership development. My name is Cristina Istrate, and I'm an asset manager with FCP, a private real estate firm based in Washington, D.C. I have over 9 years of experience in multifamily real estate industry, and I'm excited to be here today and moderate this panel. Before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment and introduce each of the panel experts so that you have a little bit more background on today's subject matter experts. Kristi Flickert, the Vice President of Enterprise Growth at RealLink, MultiFamily's leading video leasing and engagement platform. She has 23 years of multifamily experience and has held national roles in leasing, training, recruitment, sales, and marketing. Kristi has a proven background in employee development and has mentored hundreds of associates to success. She instructs for apartment associations across the country. We're so thrilled to have you with us, Kristi. Our next panel expert is Jen Piccotti, who got her start in property management in 2000 and has spent the last 15 years listening to, learning from, and finding solutions for residents, employees, and executives. As the Chief Learning Officer of Swift Bunny, she loves sharing her unique and actionable insights on the latest trends in employee engagement, resident retention, and reputation management. We are so excited to have Jen join us today as she will connect the dots between data, performance, and progress. Welcome, Jen. So let's dive in on our first topic, which is related to what a career path in multifamily real estate looks like these days. The question for the panel is, are you still seeing a traditional career path that maybe goes from a leasing specialist to an APM to a property manager, or you're seeing some new trends when it comes to a career path? Also, wanted to get your perspective on how about those industry professionals who are good at leasing and sales, and maybe they want to grow in their role, but they don't envision themselves being a property manager, you know, what their career path will look like.
Thanks, Cristina. I'll jump on that. I think that there is this misconception, and I think part of it is that it's been reinforced, but part of it is people don't know the right questions to ask. I think that the linear path, you know, from leasing to assistant to property manager, we have to be realistic about what that is, because those are completely different skill sets. And a person who really enjoys the sales aspect and the customer service side of being a leasing agent, they might find that being an assistant manager and really diving into the accounting side of things might not be of interest to them. It might not be in their wheelhouse, and they might not have access to the types of activities they enjoy every day. So I think we are seeing more and more light bulbs turn on, and really being able to look at each individual and saying, what's interesting to you? What do you enjoy most about your current role? What are the other roles in our organization that get you really interested and curious and you want to learn more about? And having those conversations so that people can say, okay, if I want to go from leasing But I'm really interested in what's happening over in marketing. How do we get them there? How do we make sure they get the training and the mentoring so that they're ready for when a role opens over there?
Yeah, I would add to that. I think that, well, number one, I know that we do the best work when we are working on something that we love. Now, there are parts of every job, even I love my job now. There are pieces of it that aren't my favorite pieces of things to do. But when, for the most part, you love what you do, you will flourish. So I would also encourage people that, like Jen's saying, these are very different roles, but we have to be sure that we aren't just taking a promotion because we want a promotion or we want that bump in pay. So it seems it's a carrot that gets dangled in front of leasing teams all the time. Hey, you're a great superstar leasing consultant. Let's make you into a property manager. But like Jen said, they're just very different roles, very different skill sets, and people usually are getting a different kind of satisfaction from each of those roles. If you're a leasing person, you're usually the people person and you're the one who wants to be friends with everyone. If you're a manager, a lot of times you're good at those things, but you also like to dig into the numbers and the data and problem solving and dealing with those, mad residents and just solving those kinds of issues. So they're just very different. And sometimes those are competing mindsets or strengths, if you will. So I would encourage people to not go after the first thing that's thrown at them or the first carrot that's dangled, but instead look for, if your company has a very linear path, which a lot of them still do, we're seeing a shift, but it's still very traditional. If you are someone who you have a different idea of what you want to do in the company, start looking for pain points that you can help solve. And you can help solve some of these when you're in your existing role. And sometimes that's the problem, right? If it's a role that doesn't exist right now today, the company they want to vet a new role. Is it going to work? How do we roll this out company wide? And so sometimes you might even be ready for this new role that you've kind of created in your mind, or you think that would be a benefit, but the company is not quite ready for that yet. And you have to be okay with that too. But there are ways that you can absolutely solve some of those pain points and make a name for yourself while you're still in your existing position. Now, does that take some extra work and working behind the scenes and after hours? Yes. But personally, I can tell you that pays off.
That's awesome. Can you guys talk a little bit about Rockstar versus a superstar and what that it means?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is a really important part of our career development conversation, and especially for those of you who are growing into leadership roles, but also as you're thinking about your own path that you want to take. And I love this example of rock stars versus superstars. We know those people who they are in their role, they love what they do, they are really good at it, and they can't imagine doing anything else. They just really like what they do. Those are our rock stars. Those are our rock steady people. They're the foundation of our organization. They might be the foundation of our team, but they are and become the subject matter experts of their particular role and their particular tasks. And that's okay. That's a great place for them to be, because we need that foundation. We need that consistency in every organization. But then we also have superstars, and the superstars are the ones who are always looking for that next opportunity, that next experience, that next job title, that next level. And they're the ones that our companies need in order to move us forward and to keep us innovating and to keep us examining that question of what if we did this, what if we tried this, what if we tried this new program, this new technology, whatever it might be. We need those people. We need both. But I think one of the challenges that we constantly run up against is when we talk about annual review process and you're sitting down with your supervisor and your supervisor says, and they're reading the script, where do you see yourself in 3 years or 5 years? And we've been conditioned to talk about a promotion or being a manager. And so we just think that's what we need to say to give them the answer that they're looking for. But for rock stars, those ones who just truly love exactly what they're doing and want to be the very best of what they're doing, they feel stuck and they're afraid to say, well, can I just do this? Like, I just want to do this. And so we need to ask a different question when it comes to career development or when someone's asking you the question, where do you see yourself in a year, 3 years, 5 years, be confident enough to say, I really enjoy what I'm doing. I want to be the very best, whatever I'm doing, that there is. I want to become the subject matter expert. So what are the additional skills I can learn to make me better at this role? What are the additional technologies that I can become acquainted with to be the very best of this role? And allow those people and allow yourself to be that rock star. And when you ask that same question to a superstar, you know, what skills or what development would you like to see in the next year or 3 or 5 years? The superstars are going to say, well, I want to be in this position. I want to get this next thing. And so you'll be able to gauge, what is it? Do I have a rock star on my hands, or do I have a superstar on my hands? And then you can know how to best support them in that particular role. Have you come across this, Kristi?
I think that was perfect.
Great insights, Jen.
Yeah, but success does look different for everyone. And, you know, I see this quote every so often show up on social media that comparison is the thief, like it steals your joy. And so everyone is on a different trajectory and people have different skill sets. And so you just can't always compare yourself. Yes, we have performance reviews, and we have metrics that we have to be evaluated against in most positions. But you have to know that, again, when you're happy, you're doing the work that you like, you feel fulfilled with the employer that you're with, don't necessarily compare to what everyone else is doing or the path that they are on. And the market today is just so wild and crazy. It's like a wild frontier out there. So it's kind of okay. Like there are new things being created all the time. So I get excited about that for the people who feel like they're just stuck in the status quo, because there are some new things that could be created next week, next month, next year with technology and just the way that things are shifting. There's so much opportunity.
Yep, great point, Kristi. And with so much opportunity, you know, sometimes we get disappointments. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're using these disappointments as part of our growth process, and how can we use them to our advantage.
So a couple of things, you know, in my experience, one thing that I love to ask myself when I'm feeling disappointed, or I actually was passed up for my first multifamily promotion that I could have gotten, and I felt like I had so earned it, felt like it was a wrap. There was hands down no question I should be promoted to this assistant manager, you know, young leasing consultant moving into an assistant manager role, and I didn't get it. And I remember just feeling you basically grieve what you didn't get. And so I really had to sit for a minute and process that loss. And it's okay, one, to process any loss that you have. If you didn't get the number of leases you needed to get this week, if you didn't hit your budget, if you didn't get the promotion that you thought that you had in the bag, all of these different things that we want. Disappointment comes in a lot of different forms, but you have to give yourself time to process that. And what I do when I experience disappointment is I do have to sit on it for a minute. So if I'm feeling, you know, it's Thursday or Friday in any given week and something disappointing happens to me, I feel very different about it in that moment than I do when Monday rolls around. You know, I've got the weekend, that's my cooling off period. So before you make any drastic decisions or responses, I always recommend a cooling off period. But I like to ask, instead of, you know, why is this happening to me? What is this teaching me? What is it teaching me? And when I get through my little cooling off period and I go back and I say, okay, what is this teaching me? I don't like it. It doesn't seem fair. I'm disappointed. Things didn't go my way, but there is something that is going to come out of this that helps me get to whatever it is that I'm trying to get to, whether it's a promotion or something that I'm trying to accomplish. And I'll tell you, over the years, that's never failed me. But it helps you sort of pick yourself back up and put on a different lens to view things through. And it does provide some clarity. I think that you also, people should look for, who is your hype man? Like, we each should have an individual personal hype man or hype woman or hype person that is your go-to person when you need someone to give you that boost or to lift you up and to remind you of all of the things that you do right or that you're really strong at. You need that person to be that voice for you. So a few years ago, I ran for public office. I ran for city council, and I lost my first time that I ran for office. And it was something, it's very, I don't aspire to be a politician by any means. I just wanted to give back to my community. But it was running for office is something very public. And so when you lose, everyone sees you lose. Your family sees you lose, your friends, people you don't know, but now they know your name and they know that you weren't the winner. It's just really, really embarrassing and hard, and you kind of go home with your tail tucked between your legs. But for me in that situation, my family, those were my hype people. And so they kept saying, no, you got to go back and run again the next time. Like if you don't get back in the ring, then they win. So a few years later, I did exactly that. And now I'm finishing like my 5th year in office or something along those lines. But if my family hadn't been kind of like picking me up and pushing me along the way, that would have never happened. And now it's been this amazing, wonderful experience that also is complementing my career experience too. So highly recommend that you find who your hype people are.
I think
Sounds
that's
like
so valuable. I think it really is. And, you know, we are all going to come against those huge disappointments, and to be able to keep moving forward. And it really makes all the difference. And, you know, I remember I was an executive assistant, and I worked my way into a quality manager position, which is what I had really wanted to do when I got the job. And I did it for the residential communities. And I had been doing it for a couple of years. I've been doing a lot of great projects. I was really proud of what I'd been doing. And I went in to my boss, who's a wonderful man, and I laid out the whole thing of like, you know what, I want to be quality manager for the entire company, not just our division, but for the entire company. And here's why. Give him a whole presentation. And he said, under no uncertain terms, he's like, that is never going to happen. So just do your work, do what you're supposed to do, and just keep doing a good job there. And there was that sense of embarrassment. And maybe it was less public, but I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. I was frustrated. And I thought I was ready. And you have to take that time to grieve. But I think the other part too is when you're ready, you've given yourself a couple days or a week or whatever, you have to go back in and you have to do what you do best. And you have to continue to do the things that I know that I'm good at this. I know I'm competent in this, and ask for more opportunity. Because what happened for me is I started volunteering with some of the other divisions when I heard there was a problem and I had some extra bandwidth. I'd step over and say, hey, can I help you with that? Is there anything I can, do? And they would take me up on it. And I would do that little project or that little thing, or give an idea, or point to a resource that I knew of. And over time, they started coming to me more often. And after about 1.5 years, those division leaders came to my boss and said, we want her, what she's doing for you, we want Jen to do that for us too. And so my boss came in to me one day, he's like, so sit down for a minute. How would you feel about being a quality manager for the entire company? And I was just like, yes. And so it was for acquisitions, development, commercial and residential properties. But I didn't give up. And I think sometimes you have to give yourself a minute, but then you've got to go in and just do your best work and just continue to show them and continue to build your skill and continue to make yourself available, because paths will open. Maybe not the way you thought, but they'll open.
Yeah. And I was going to add to that while you were thinking, it is incredibly brave to continue to go back and try again after that disappointment. That is really brave. And my friend Melissa White in the industry, if you're not following her, you should, but she has a motto. I talk about it all the time. And she says, do it afraid. We have to do things, very scary things all of the time. So for me, it was very scary in the first place to run for public office, but then it was even scarier to do it a second time when I'd already experienced a loss. But that's where your bravery comes out. You have to do it afraid, and you have to be brave. And that's really brave for you to keep pushing on when you've experienced that disappointment. The company, and Jen, it sounds like you were in the same situation, but the company where I did not get that first initial promotion where I thought I should be promoted, I didn't leave. I didn't leave that company and say, okay, forget you guys, I'm going over here. I actually stayed started traveling around. That got me exposure to more supervisors in the company, and just people started talking about, gosh, Kristi is a good performer. And eventually those promotions came, and I was with that company for 15 years and learned so much about multifamily, and it really is why I'm so successful today. So I would say don't necessarily, you're going to feel like you might want to abandon ship sometimes, but most of the time that is your crew and it is where you're supposed to be. You just have to get through those areas of disappointment and be brave and keep pushing on.
That's such a good point. Love it.
Yep, great insights, Jen and Kristi, which kind of goes into the next topic on personal branding. So I wanted to ask, how to use the power of personal branding to advance your career, how to be more assertive during some of the difficult conversations. And then what's the difference between confidence and competence, which I think Jen slightly mentioned on that.
Well, I think your personal brand is what you bring to the table, and I think with social media, we talk a lot about personal brand, but personal brand is a concept that's been around for a long, long time. And it's really about, what are you known for? What do people, when they're in a project or they're trying to figure something out, you're the name that comes to mind. They're like, oh, we should reach out to this person. And one of the most effective things I've seen over and over again, I've been this person and I've reached out to these people. They're the ones who are willing to raise their hand and say, hey, I can help with that. Or they ask, how can I help you with that? And they're willing to do things that are not necessarily in their job description. It may be what some people might consider it's beneath me, like offering to set up a room for a meeting. Well, I'm not the assistant. No, but I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to go and put the waters out, or, I can call in the lunch order. That's fine. But being willing to put yourself out there and help, but also being able to offer your expertise and know your competence, because we each have things that we are very competent at. We're very skilled at. We have experience that can speak to a lot of different things, and we need to be willing to own it. I think so many of us have been, whether it's how we were raised or just because you've had some rough experiences, we don't want to say, hey, I'm really good at X, Y, and Z. We're afraid that we might be bragging, but it's not bragging when you can say with confidence, I know how to do this, or I've been in this situation before, and here's what I saw work really well. And so being part of that personal brand is being willing to step forward and say, this is what I know, this is how I can assist. And if I don't know anything about this, I want to learn. Tell me more about that. And having that reputation of being willing to jump in, being resourceful, being helpful, being pleasant. Can't tell you how far that goes. People know you. They begin to know you for those types of things, and they will keep coming back and asking you for those things and for more. So that's been a very powerful thing, is knowing what you're competent in, and knowing that also brings confidence where you can step forward and say, I can help with that, and here's how.
Yeah, I agree. And I think personal branding, I see it executed in so many different ways. Some people really try at it. Others are more authentic in their approach. And to me, what it is not like your company brand. It's not your logo and your colors and making sure that every post is, yours, and you've got special photos of yourself or, polished image. It is, like Jen said, what are you known for? And if you're not sure what your personal brand is or what your voice is that you're putting out there, a question that I asked myself really early on was, what is my purpose, both within my company and outside of the company, but for example, today within the industry? So I'm not here as a function of my company. I'm here just as a multifamily veteran who's been around for a little while, and offering my insight. So what do I want to be known for, and what is my purpose? And for me personally, I like to be the approachable expert or the approachable connector. So I've been in marketing and know my way around technology a little bit. And so sometimes those are areas that they struggle in. And if you've ever been in a room with someone who's really, really smart, but you're afraid to ask the question, or sometimes you might feel like this to your boss. I've had supervisors before where they were so smart, but I was afraid to ask a question because I didn't want to look silly. I don't want to be that for people. I don't want people to ever be afraid to ask a question. I want them to bring all of those questions to me so I can educate them and make them feel smarter and help them just, again, like level up in their career. Or if they can go back to their company or their boss and feel like, you know, they're shining now because they look really smart or they know about this new piece of technology that maybe I'm the one who filled them in on. I don't want the credit for that, but I want to be known for people, the person that people bring those questions to or that they reach out to, and that I do it in an approachable way. So that's just personally, when I think about my purpose, I encourage you all to think about that too. What is your purpose? You know, again, what is your strong suit and what do you have to offer to your company, your colleagues, and the industry that we serve? Because networking also plays into this. And you might be an introvert, you might be an extrovert, but I will say that networking has been an incredible part of my personal journey in the industry, is making those connections. So for example, Cristina, you and I were not connected really before we started working on this webinar today, but I know that we will stay connected after this because we've just found common ground and we've enjoyed working together. So it's not ever a one and done, but go out and use that personal brand and to leverage it for your leadership skills. You never know who you're going to meet. I also tell people when you are at an event, so whether it is a Chamber of Commerce event, if you're at an NAA sponsored event, do not sit with your colleagues that you work with every day. You talk to these people all day long, and that is very naturally what we all gravitate to. We're going to go find a table and we're going to sit with all of the people from our company, or we're going to sit with all of the people from our property. I encourage you to go and sit at a table where you don't know anyone and start meeting people. And even if you're an introvert, you can have some questions prepped ahead of time to ask people, you know, about where they work, or just open-ended questions to get dialogue started. But that will honestly help you branch out and grow within your own company, because you'll learn things and get skill sets from those other people that you know, and you'll bring it back to your company. Or if ever you need some other opportunities, that's your network that you can then leverage.
That's awesome. Let's slightly shift gears and talk about being a leader today. So our environment, you know, is rapidly changing. What was the norm yesterday might be changing today. How, as a leader, you know, how do you stay up to date and how do you continue to bring value to the team?
I think the most valuable thing you can bring in as a leader is to be willing to help. I love what Kristi said about being an approachable expert, because I've had those leaders, the same thing. I was scared to death to ask a dumb question. And then I've had other people who just made it so easy and were more than happy to assist or point to a resource or point to somewhere else where I could find the information I needed today. But I also think not hiding in your own bubble. When we're in an organization and we've been there for a long time, it's easy to just all talk about the same things that we've always talked about. And what's important to my direct supervisor, I might concentrate my attention on those topics, but not expose myself to what else is going on out there. And so I think, you know, Kristi's talked about networking, and that is such a huge thing, especially as you are becoming a leader, as you are developing your own brand, building that community around you. Because the longer you're in this industry, it's a small pond, relatively speaking. It's a small industry. You cross paths with people all the time, over and over again, especially if you're going to events, especially if you're logging onto webinars, you see some of the same faces over and over again. Start building your cohort, building your tribe, so that even if you don't see each other except for once a year, you connect, you see each other, you catch up, you get new input, you get new information. Like we were just talking right before this webinar started, Kristi was sharing about virtual tours and self-guided tours. I've been hearing a lot about these things in the industry, but what I want to do now is I'm going to make an appointment with Kristi and say, okay, tell me what you know. Tell me how people are using this to their greatest advantage. Help me understand this better. So now I will have new information to not only bring back to my colleagues and say, hey, how can we use this information? How can we use this knowledge so that we can better support our clients, we can better support the other people we know in the industry, but getting and understanding that information from a variety of sources within this industry really helps you connect the dots internally on where do we need to be focusing our attention, where might we need to shift gears a little bit, and maybe we've been going very strongly down one path for a long time. Being willing to take in new information, be curious, and say, hey, we might need to branch off a tiny bit. We might need to shift our course a little bit so that we can stay relevant, so that we can stay attractive, not only to our own employees, but to our customers, our residents, our potential new employees. We need to be able to be agile and shift our focus. But the only way we do that is if we're willing to hear new information from other sources.
Yeah, I would echo that with leveraging your network. In fact, I reached out to someone else in the industry today that is with a completely different company, but I know they've got insight and intel that will help me and my team. So that's where, again, leveraging your network, not just personally, but to just level up your whole team. And I would say too, one thing that I really try to do to keep a pulse on what's going on in the market is I try to always be on the front line with my team. And there are times where I certainly have to put my head down and work, but I've had bosses in the past who just sort of, whenever something would catch on fire, and sometimes in this industry, that means literally, they kind of run the other way. And then you have leaders who, no matter what's happening, and you all probably saw this last year with COVID when it was first starting to hit, I hope that you had a leader who was willing to just run headfirst into the crazy and lead your team and say, hey, I don't know really quite what the right answer is yet either, but I'm running into it and we're going to figure this out. So I always choose to be the leader who is in the thick of it and not kind of hiding behind my team either, because that never feels good. And even if you don't have all the answers, the team sees that you're there with them. I would say too that there is there's something that we do here called a blueprint review. And I think this is the next slide, maybe if we want to advance the slides, but this is something that we do here at Relink. And this is a copy of mine. I know it's small print, but we'll send you a copy if you want to read through it. And this is something that everyone on our leadership team, we create this and we share this with all of the associates when they first start. And so this is really a blueprint to me as your leader, because every leader, we are not perfect. We have quirks, we have old habits that are hard to break. Sometimes you maybe have had a leader where you just can't quite figure them out. You're trying to figure out, gosh, how do I best communicate with this person, or what do I need to do to get promoted? And so this blueprint is essentially my personal leadership blueprint. These are my values. These are my expectations of the team. For example, my boss on his blueprint, he's not a morning person, and his blueprint says, please do not schedule any meetings before 9 a.m. Like, I'm sorry. I know you're a morning person and you like to start early, but that's just not his jam. And he just doesn't function well before 9 a.m. So that is something on his blueprint. So I just know that even though I'm an early riser, I'm not going to involve him in a meeting until after 9 a.m. And that was really helpful to learn when I was first coming in and starting. So this is an example of something as you work to become a leader. You could even have this as an associate. If you're not quite a leader and you're working to move into that role, you can start thinking about what are your personal work preferences and what are your expectations of your team. So I did want to share this today because it has been something that helps the team just understand how I function. And then I meet with them and go over this, and they kind of help me understand how they operate. And it just creates more synergy across the team.
I love this. This is like my favorite thing that I have seen. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to steal this and I want to share it with everybody.
Yes, take it. Well, I think we stole it from somewhere else. So again, here's our network.
It's
just
so
sharing all of the intellectual knowledge.
Yeah. Because I remember when I was an executive assistant he was the senior VP of residential properties. And, I'm trying to figure out how to support him and what I need to do. And someone clued me in, like within the first couple of weeks. They're like, when you send him an email, if it's not in the first sentence of the email, he won't know it exists. So whatever you need, spell it out in the first sentence, because he will not read past that first line. And he also responds to colorful tables rather than cells of data. And I was like, okay, those two things alone made my life exponentially easier. And it also helped me when other people were bringing him reports, when other people were trying to get his, input or participation, I could then share his mini blueprint, get in the first sentence or put it in a colorful pie chart and he'll respond. So, but those are such valuable things. And I think even for coworkers, what an amazing tool to just help each other understand, even if it's 2 or 3 things, to just say, this is how I work. How do you work? What works best for you? I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and I know we're running over probably a little, and this might lead into the next section, Cristina, about self-care. But one of the things that I have on my blueprint, and I dropped my email address in the chat. So if you all just shoot me a quick email and say I need the blueprint, I'll shoot it to you right after the call. That way I can get it in your hands quickly. But one of the boxes on my blueprint says equitable flexibility. And when we think about self-care, one of the things that I also try to do is set an example for my team where it comes to balance. And oh, did we lose Jen? We did.
We did.
I'll keep going. She's probably just has to dial back in. She probably lost connection real quick. But what I do in that is I'm also setting the precedent with my team as to our work expectations as far as like work hours and work-life balance. And I want my team to have more flexibility than I ever had when I was younger and coming up through the ranks and starting my family. So that's something that you see on my blueprint is I tell the team, listen, if you are ever about to miss an important family milestone because of something work related, you better come and tell me, and I'm going to help you figure it out because family has to come first. So that's kind of also what I use to set the tone with the cultural perspectives of our work environment here and what I expect as a leader. So it's not just, hey, here's what I expect of you as the associate, as far as like, here are all the things I want you to do for me, but it's also saying, hey, I want you to go be with your families, or I don't want you to check email after 10 p.m. or whatever those cultural rules might be within your organization.
Yeah, definitely. And I know for us, we have a smaller team. We actually did a personality test, and then we all met and we all talked about our communication styles and just how different, we like certain things. And I think it's so important to have that conversation in your team and understand how it's the best to interact, with different team members, just to have a more effective team. So I think that's awesome. Yes, next topic is self-care. So one of the first things we wanted to talk about is, why self-care is so important, and is work-life balance a real thing or it's a myth?
Oh, I think it's an absolute myth. I'm sorry, I had having technical difficulties, but I'm back. For me, this is something that I have shared with hundreds of audiences and with my own team, is that there is no work-life balance, but there is a balance of have-to-dos and want-to-dos. And in work life and in our personal life, we both have those buckets. Like at my home life, I have to do the laundry, or I have to do the dishes, or things will go very, very badly. I don't enjoy doing them, but I have to do them. Or if I want my and my family's life to be a smoother, better experience. But I also love to travel with my family, and I love to sit and play Clue with them at night. And so do we have a good balance of those things? Same thing at work. At work, there may be things that I cannot stand, of like filing or, making copies, or certain kinds of meetings that just feel very painful, but they're necessary because we need to get updates, we need to get certain things done. But I also really enjoy networking. I really enjoy opening a client's eyes to, okay, here's a cause and effect thing that's happening, and here's what we can do to make that situation better for your employees. Those things are very fulfilling, and I love to do them. And so when we look at this idea of self-care and balance, are we doing enough of the want to do's, love to do's, as we are with the have to do's? And if our whole bucket is on the side of I have to do this stuff, that's when we need to talk with our leaders, talk with our coworkers, our supervisors, and say, I'm feeling overwhelmed because I feel like I have to do all of these things, and I'm not having the opportunity to do these things that I really enjoy and I'm really good at and I'm really effective at? Is there a way to balance this out? And there may be times during the year where that's just how the scales are going to balance out. But looking at the cadence of the year, the trend that's happened through the year, am I finding a good balance of those have to do's and those love to do's, so that I'm feeling like I'm being refreshed and recharged? Because those things we love to do, whether it's at work or at home, if we're doing something we love, it is energizing, it is recharging. And it's okay to seek out those things, knowing that we have to do some things sometimes, but it's okay and it's good and it's important to pursue the things that we really enjoy, because we're good at them.
Yeah, and I would add to this whole self-care topic. We hear the word self-care a lot. We hear this a lot. I hear it a lot with moms too, because moms are a lot like leaders, where we're the last ones to ever take care of ourselves. It's just really, it feels very selfish to take care of yourself. But with leaders usually, who's taking care of the leader? So one thing I try to do is, again, work with everyone else on my team and those other leaders and check in with them, because there probably isn't someone checking in on them once you're at the top or you're in that leadership role. Sometimes someone's not checking on you, but also looking outside of your organization. So I also have my tribe of people who are other leaders, other people in similar roles in other organizations who I can go to when I just need a minute to vent or be frustrated, or if I'm going through that moment of disappointment. And those people usually get it, and they can help get me back on track, or they know to further encourage that self-care, whether it's, hey, you've got to take a day off, or you need to go to the spa for an hour, go get a massage today or tomorrow. But you have to surround yourself with those people who will kind of force you into that taking care of yourself too, because leaders tend to work. And then even if you're not working, like Jen, you've got a family then that you're also taking care of on the side. And so we come last, and it shouldn't be that way. And so it's really hard to notice that until you are burnt out and there's really like nothing left. So we want to fix that before you get to that burnout stage.
And building your community, that is so critical. And that's something that doesn't come natural to me. It hasn't come natural to me. And this was an area where I had to be really brave and step out and invite people, not waiting for someone to invite me to do something, but to reach out and invite other people to do things. And, I work remote, and I know some people do now, but people are getting back to the office, but I worked remote for almost 15 years. And I found out there were a lot of other women in my neighborhood who happen to be moms who also work remote, and they're accountants and they're marketing specialists. They're in different industries. I've got a stunt car driver. I've got a professional blogger, all these interesting people that are in my general neighborhood. And so I started reaching out and saying, hey, do you want to get together for lunch on a monthly basis? And sometimes they could, sometimes they couldn't. Sometimes it would be one person, sometimes it's 12, but we have what we call the home officer network, and we meet for lunch once a month. And we talk about, sometimes it's business stuff, sometimes it's how do you deal with a team issue or a boss issue, or client issue. And sometimes it's about our kids. How have you dealt with this? How did you put together a carpool? But finding and building that community, take the steps now, because it happens over days and weeks and months. It doesn't just happen overnight. But reach out to someone, invite them to lunch, because you never know, that other person might be like, oh, wow, they asked me to lunch. It's a huge compliment. Reach out to people. And that's one way that you can take care of yourself, by over time building that community, because Kristi has got it absolutely right. You need those people who you can fall back on in the good times and the tough times. And you never know how you're going to be able to help them as well, and be a part of someone else's tribe or cheer section, be someone else's hype man too, because we need each other. We can't do this on our own. Leaders cannot do it on their own. We need to take care of each other.
Yeah, we have to do more of, we have to know what fills our tank. So, if we're constantly writing checks to our team, to our employer, to our families, we have to put more deposits in so we can keep writing those checks. And so that's another thing to just ask yourself is, what is it that makes you feel good after you've done that. So that might be going to lunch with friends, or it could be a happy hour on Fridays, or maybe it's going shopping. Actually, TJ Maxx fills my, well, it's taking my money out of my personal bank account, but it is always like, it makes me feel better. So what are those things that do make you feel better? And you've got to recognize that you need to be doing that every so often. But once you get to this leadership stage, it really, a lot of times, is on you to recognize when you need to do that, because when you're in a younger phase of your career, or maybe not that leadership position yet, you usually have a manager or someone who's checking on you and can see those signs, and they're encouraging that. But once you get to that leadership phase, it is, you've got to be more self-aware about that.
Yep, 100% agree. Kristi and Jen, I know you both mentioned networking and just how important networking is for our careers, for our lives. So wanted to see if you can talk a little bit more, perhaps how we can get involved more with NAA, and then, the value of networking, as well as what's the difference between a mentor and an advocate.
Oh, I'll take the mentor question. I love this one. I'm so passionate about this. So everyone needs a mentor. A mentor is someone who probably knows more than you know, and they're going to teach you how to do all of these new things, or how to do what you're doing better. So if you're a brand new leasing consultant, your mentor is probably a veteran leasing consultant, and they're showing you how to ask even better questions on your telephone calls, and how to take a better tour, how to get more yeses out of your tours. An advocate is somebody who is going to advocate for you when you are not around. So when there's a meeting at a table and you don't have a seat at that table yet, who is that person that's going to speak up on your behalf and say, I know Kristi Flickert and she would be amazing for this role, or you should give this project to Kristi. She's been flourishing lately, or let me show you or tell you about what she just accomplished for me last week. So that advocate is somebody who's really going to stand up for you and put your name in the hat when you can't personally do that yourself, when you're not quite there yet. So I do think that we should also identify, and this is not just before you're a leader, this is even now, like I'm still doing this now at this point in my career. I need mentors and I need advocates, and identify who are those people for you. And if you don't quite have that yet, and listen, some companies are really small and they don't have the workforce where you have a lot of seasoned veterans, or maybe you're at, scattered locations, and so you're just not geographically close to someone. But one, you can mentor from a distance. So your mentor doesn't always have to be right in your backyard. And two, look outside of your own company, because some of my best experiences came again from the networking and meeting people online and having a relationship like that. The person I mentioned that I reached out to earlier today, I've known her online, huge person in the industry, and I just need some industry advice and need to pick her brain. And yet she's in a completely different state. So that's, don't think that that has to stay within your own company or organization either. You can look for those people outside of that. And sometimes that's better, because if you have challenges that you're trying to solve within your company, sometimes you don't want to talk to someone internally about it. And so if you have a trusted confidant somewhere else that just has that outside perspective, that can be helpful too.
And it's okay to reach out. Facebook makes it easy. LinkedIn makes it easy. If you know of someone in the industry, maybe it's in your role, maybe it's in a different role, send a message and just say, hey, I see you online here. I see you, or about these types of things. I would love to be able to pick your brain for 30 minutes. And 99 out of 100 times, that person will be very flattered and will be more than happy to share the knowledge that they have with someone. And they're looking to make connections too. So you have to be kind of brave to reach out and do it, but it's definitely worth it, because this is a people-focused industry. People like people. That's why they fell into it, and that's why they stayed. And we're also a lot of problem solvers. And so if we can help someone else solve a problem, for the vast majority of people in this industry, that is something that really fills their bucket. And so by reaching out, you're actually it's a compliment to them. You're making them feel good and feel useful, and to be a problem solver And I think you'll find most people will invite that conversation. So reach out and do it. And the big part of
go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say, an easy way to do and get involved is to be involved with NAA type events, whether it's conferences, regional conferences, whether it's your local apartment association, Apartmentalize. There are so many of these types of venues where you can go and get exposure to so many people who are focused exactly on what we do, which is phenomenal. And I would encourage you, for me, these types of things used to be terrifying, to go in and be like, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by all these people. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. As Kristi said, don't sit with all of the people that you know and are friends with, sit somewhere else, have access to other people, to other people's conversations. And it really is enriching, not only professionally, but personally as well. You develop friendships here that truly do last you a lifetime. So this provides such a great way to get involved.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do think it's a compliment to be asked to mentor someone, and most of us, would be honored to do that. I think that we probably feel like I will never forget the people who mentored and guided me, and just am still so grateful for the opportunities they afforded me early on in my career. And so we have a duty to sort of, I say, send the elevator back down and pick up more people and bring them up too. There is absolutely room for everyone at the top. And if you're more of an introvert and a little more afraid of the networking, like Jen was early on, there are people like me who are the extroverts. And so if you are an extrovert, when you're going to the events, you have a duty to go and seek out the Jens of the world. And I say this all of the time too. I go to conferences and I look for who's the person that their company sent them by themselves. And they don't even have any coworkers to try to hang out with. So you can tell these people they're sitting by themselves, or they're in the corner on their phone, or they just look a little lost, a little frazzled, a little scared. And so those are the people that I seek out and say, hey, come over here, come, let me introduce you to my friends. Here's, and that's how it all blossoms. And 20 years later, you'll have a wonderful friendship with these people. So NAA has been, and I think too, you can get on, there are committees. So if you can't make meetings, or maybe you're not in a position yet where your company lets you travel to the national conferences, there are local committees and meetings that you can get involved in. And I'll say a lot of these, you're not compensated for it. A lot of these take place after hours or outside of your working hours, but you do get compensated in other ways. You're going to have relationships that help you leverage yourself and move up in the world, or you're going to feel really good about the work that you're doing, because a lot of the work that we do with NAA is giving back, or you're growing a skill set that's going to add to your resume. So just know that there is no shortcut to leadership. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of blood and sweat and a lot of tears. There is no shortcut, but you do get compensated in those other ways that will eventually come to fruition for you.
That's true. I like to say that nothing is wasted. So even if you throw yourself into a frying pan and it is painful, there's going to be a new topic that you're exposed to that you haven't thought about before, a new skill that you have the opportunity to acquire, a new process that maybe you haven't seen in action before, or a new person that really becomes an important person in your career, or an important resource that you can use or point to over the years. So nothing is wasted. So take advantage of every opportunity and be brave to get involved, or reach out to someone that you see might be kind of, sitting in the corner. It's funny, one of the greatest resources in my life, I went to a conference, I was by myself, it was at lunchtime, and I sat down at a lunch table and I was just saying, like, please no one come and talk to me. I couldn't even handle it that moment. I was so overwhelmed from all the classes I had been in. I was just like, I just need a minute. But there was literally nowhere else to sit. And so this guy walks over with a tray and he looks at me and he could see that I was just radiating every possible, like, do not. And so he got brave and he's like, I am so sorry to bother you. There's literally no other seats in here. Is it okay if I sit over here? I promise I will not bother you at all. And I was like, of course you can sit down. Please have a seat. And then of course we fell into conversation, and he became a great resource for some of the projects that I was working on that I didn't know where to start. And so he's been great over the years. And we always joke about the fact that he barged in on my private lunch, and that's how a friendship and a collaboration began. So, be willing to maybe push someone else out of their comfort zone a tiny bit, or put yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit, because really good things do happen.
Yeah, 100% agree. Awesome, great insight, Jen and Kristi. Thank you for all this valuable information that you have shared with us today. I think we have about 4 minutes for Q&A. So if anybody in the audience has any questions, please feel free to put your question in the chat. I know one of my questions that I have for the panel, as we are waiting for other questions to come in, is I know some really good, property management professionals that are in the maintenance side of the business, and they have expressed interest into possibly, becoming a property manager, which we know it's on the other side, right? You have the admin and then you have the maintenance. And I wanted to ask you if you have any tips that you can share on how they can transition from, from maintenance to leasing/operations.
I have actually had some friends that have done this. They've made that leap from maintenance to leasing, and then eventually to being a property manager. And this is something that we really need to coach our teams, and we need to absorb ourselves, is raising our hand and saying, I'm interested in this. So often we think that if we work really hard, someone's going to come and tap us on the shoulder and be like, I want to promote you. And sometimes that happens, but more often it's when we express, I'm interested in doing this, and so that other people can create opportunities for you. What I have seen most successful in that particular transition, maintenance to the leasing side, is talking to the property manager and saying, hey, I know we're short-staffed today. I'm happy to be in here and cover the phones for leasing. Hey, could you show me how to lead a tour and do some job swapping and some shadowing? And leasing loves to take maintenance on a tour, loves to show them what they're doing, and vice versa, because then you also gain an appreciation for what the other team members do on a day-to-day basis. And I've seen it when a team can talk internally and let people know, this is what I'm interested in doing. It often turns out that when something opens up, the property manager is like, oh my gosh, this person is awesome. They've been filling in. Can we have them on our leasing team? So internally, just let people know what you like, because so often people will open those doors and create those paths for you.
I love that. Such great advice. The only other thing I would maybe add is dig into the data, because data is one of the best ways to make your case about anything, whether you're moving from maintenance into the office side of things or any other position or role, or if you're just trying to convince your boss to buy something that you want to put in the budget next year. There is a really compelling story that can be told with the data. So those people could start combing through the leasing logs. Can they listen to leasing calls? And is there anything, maintenance just always has this great perspective that we just normally don't ask them for. They are out on property all day long. They are face to face with more residents than usually the office staff ever even is. So I would ask them to comb through the data, or can they evaluate or audit some of those office or leasing processes and provide some feedback for that? Or maybe even they've got ideas on how to improve or problem solve those things too.
I love that. It's such a great idea and a great point.
Thank you, Kristi and Jen. I think we are running out of time. So thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Thank you for our awesome subject matter experts, Kristi and Jen. We appreciate your time. Sarah, back to you. I don't know if there are any follow-ups.
Yep. Thank you all again. We will be in touch and hope you join our upcoming Next Gen webinars. And if anyone has any questions for our speakers, feel free to email them directly. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.